Night has fallen, and the moon is a glowing golden orb in the black sky. See how it shines on the dark back roads of America, and on one road in particular. Come with us, and we'll take a walk down the moonlit road, for the night is waiting, and the moon is full.
The Moonlit Road presents Episode 11, Taily-Po, written and told by Veronica Byrd.
The trials and tribulations of living in today's modern society can tend to wear on your nerves. One can grow very weary of dealing with paying bills, taxes, insurance, morning and evening traffic, and the pollution, not to mention anything about keeping food in the refrigerator. Oftentimes, the whole thing can make you want to holler, throw up both your hands. And that's exactly what old Bill Smith did. He gave up the luxuries, and if you ask me, some of the necessities of modern life. He loaded up just the barest of essentials and his 3 hunting dogs into his truck, and he moved way up into the North Georgia mountains. Smitty, that's what all of us folks in town called him, figured it wouldn't be that much of an adjustment. After all, he did love hunting, fishing, and the great outdoors. And he did have the companionship of his 3 best friends, his hunting dogs, I Know, You Know, and Comfortable Calico. What more could a man ask for? Now, Smitty built himself a nice little cabin way back in the woods. It wasn't very big, but it was just enough for him. The cabin only had 2 rooms. One he used for a bedroom, and the other for every other room, living room, dining room, den, and even kitchen. He had built himself a nice big fireplace where he could cook his food and warm his body on chilly nights. Smitty had planted himself a nice little vegetable garden on the side of the house, and he would hunt and fish for most of his food. But at least once a month, he would drive the 25 miles down the mountain to the little store to buy those things that he couldn't provide for himself. During the warm months, Smitty had no problem catching as much small game as he needed, but the colder months proved to be a little more difficult to keep his stomach full. Well, it was on one of those cold, wintry nights that Smitty went to his storage shed to see what he could find for dinner. All he found was a small piece of fatback meat and a handful of rice. There was too much snow on the ground to travel the 25 miles to the store, so he had to make do with what he had. He ate the fatback and a little bit of rice, but he gave most of the rice in the water where he had boiled the meat to his dogs. After all, they had to eat too. I know, you know, Comfortable Calico. Come on, doggies, and get some of this here dinner. And those dogs came running in as fast as they could, and they lapped up all of that rice mixture. Smitty was still a little bit hungry, but there wasn't much he could do about that. So despite the protest of his grumbling stomach, Smitty stoked the fire in the fireplace to keep the cabin warm, and he went to bed. The sound of the wind blowing around and in some places through the tiny cabin had almost lulled Smitty to sleep when he heard something. He opened his eyes and saw a shadow on the wall. He eased out of bed and tiptoed into the other room. There he saw the oddest creature he had ever seen. It was short and stubby, with pointed ears and short, fat feet with long nails, and it had a long, bushy tail. There were no open windows or doors, so Smitty was confused as to how the thing had gotten in. Smitty quietly picked up his axe, crept over to the odd critter who was devouring an insect of some sort, raised his axe, and came down squarely on the creature's tail. Whack! Smitty turned to catch the varmint, but he was too quick. It hurriedly escaped through the wall. It ran straight through the wall. So Smitty was left standing there, with his long, bushy tail and a blood-laden axe in his hand. Smitty was about to throw the old tail out the door when his growling stomach reminded him of how hungry he still was. So he took that tail, cleaned it and cooked it with some herbs he had stored away from his garden, and he ate it. And it wasn't that bad tasting. Why, it kind of tasted like chicken. With his stomach finally full, Smitty got back into his warm, cozy bed. Smitty had just drifted off into a deep sleep when a strange sound awakened him. It sounded like something trying to get into the cabin. It made a scratching kind of noise. It sounded like a raccoon, maybe, scratching the side of the cabin. And Smitty knew that if he stayed real quiet, it would probably go away. So he stayed as quiet as he could. But then he heard, "Taily-Po, I want my Taily-Po." Smitty thought that the wind was playing tricks on his ears, but he heard it again. "Taily-Po, Taily-Po, I want my Taily-Po." Smitty jumped out of bed, flung open the door, and called his dogs. "I know, you know, come to go, Calico. Come on over here and see what's making that noise." The dogs came running, barking and sniffing around, but they couldn't find anything at all. So Smitty put the dogs back outside and went back to bed. Sleep had just eased into Smitty's body when he heard it again. This time, the scratching sounded like it was at the window. Whatever this was really wanted to get in. It sounded like a bear. But the scratching seemed to be on two walls at one time. Hey! Who's that at my door? Get on away from here!" Then he heard it again. Only this time it was a little bit louder. "Taily-Po, Taily-Po, I want my Taily-Po. Taily-Po, I'm coming to get my Taily-Po." Now, old Smitty wasn't one to frighten easily, but this was kind of weird. He was getting a little shaky, so he eased to the window and he called, "I know, you know, come to go, Calico. Come on over here and protect your old master. See what's scratching at my door." The three dogs bounded up the porch, and they sniffed around and barked and sniffed, but they couldn't find anything at all. Smitty decided to stay up for the rest of the night to protect himself, his dogs, and his little cabin. So he pulled a chair next to the fireplace, grabbed a blanket from his bed, and settled in for the rest of the wind-chilled wintry night. Sleep soon overtook his body, and it was almost dawn when Smitty woke with a start. The sound of scratching seemed to reverberate from every area of the cabin. Smitty searched frantically for his axe, his rifle, or something to defend himself with, but he was so frightened he couldn't find anything. The scratching grew louder and louder and louder, and then the voice. "Taily-Po, where's my Taily-Po? Give me back my Taily-Po." Smitty yelled, "Leave me alone! I ain't got your Taily-Po." Then he called, "I know, you know, come to go, Calico. Come on in here and protect your old master." This time, the dogs didn't come. So he called again. "I know, you know, come to go, Calico. Don't you hear me calling you? Come here, doggies." He waited, but still not one dog. Smitty had never been so scared in all his life. He ran to his bed and jumped in. The scratching and the voice grew louder and louder and louder, and Smitty yelled louder, "I ain't got no Taily-Po. Why don't you leave me alone and go on about your business? I ain't never hurt nobody or nothing. Just leave me alone." The scratching seemed to be inside the house now, The voice was so loud it was deafening. Taily-Po! You got my Taily-Po!
And now I'm back to get it. Give it to me now!
Smitty pulled the cover up over his head and stayed as quiet as he could. But the scratching was now in his room. He pulled the cover tighter over his body.
Taily-Po! You better give me back my Taily-Po!
Smitty then felt the thing scratching up the bottom of the bed and onto the cover. Smitty eased the cover down to see what was steadily approaching. He saw a short, stubby thing with pointed ears, fat feet with long nails, and bloodshot red eyes that glowed in the dark. Those eyes seemed to burn straight through him. Before he could pull the cover over his head again, the thing pounced on his chest, looked straight down at him, and said,
You got my Taily-Po, and you better give it back to me now.
Smitty yelled back as loud as he could, I ate it! I ate your Taily-Po, and it's gone! And that thing started to scratch and claw and tear away at poor old Smitty, trying to get that Taily-Po back. And Smitty tried to fight back as hard as he could, but there was no use. That thing had scratched him to pieces. After a month or two without hearing from Smitty, the folks who owned the store at the base of the mountain went up there to make sure everything was all right. But when they got there, all they found was his empty cabin, and it had been torn to shreds, but no sign of Smitty or the dogs. They searched and searched the woods and called for them, Smitty! I know, you know, Comtico Calico. But they never found a thing. As the search party was heading down the mountain, the wintry wind began to blow, and a strange voice could be heard saying,
Taily-Po. Now I've got my Taily-Po.
That concludes this tale from the Moonlit Road. Be sure to visit our website at themoonlitroad.com to find out more about our stories and let us know how we're doing. The Moonlit Road is produced and directed by Craig Dominy, recorded and soundscaped by Henry Howard in beautiful Stone Mountain, Georgia. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.